The town of Red Willow sat like a scar in the valley, carved out of dust and stubborn will. From the ridge above, it looked almost peaceful. Wooden buildings lined like tired soldiers, a single dirt road running through the center, mountains rising behind it as if standing guard. But anyone who stayed long enough learned the truth. Red Willow didn't sleep. It watched. Every boot step echoed louder than it should. Every glance lingered too long. Secrets didn't stay buried here. They dried out in the sun and cracked open for everyone to see. The afternoon sun burned high and clean, turning the fields beyond the fence a deep gold. Dry grass whispered in the breeze, bending like it knew better than to stand proud in this place. A horse stamped impatiently near the hitching post, its shadow long and sharp against the ground. And at the edge of town, by a weathered wooden fence worn smooth by years of hands and rope, she stood. No one knew her name. Not really. Some said it once, maybe twice, but it never stuck. Names were dangerous things in Red Willow. They gave people roots. They gave others power. She rested one hand on the fence post, fingers curled loosely around the rough wood. The rope tied around the rail was old, frayed in places, its fibers stiff with dust and age. She didn't notice, or maybe she did, and didn't care. The sun lit her skin warmly honest and unashamed. Her hair dark, thick, heavy fell over one shoulder, catching the light. She stood barefoot in the dirt, toes pressing into the earth like she was testing whether it would hold her. People noticed. Men slowed their horses. Women paused mid-conversation. A child stared too long and was yanked away by the arm. It wasn't just the way she looked. Red Willow had seen pretty faces before. Beauty alone didn't make a town uneasy. It was the way she didn't flinch. She didn't lower her eyes when men stared, didn't shift or hide or pretend she belonged somewhere else. She stood there like she had every right to exist exactly where she was. That made people uncomfortable. Across the street, a saloon door creaked open, letting out a breath of smoke and laughter. Somewhere a hammer struck wood. A dog barked once, then fell silent. Life went on, but the air had changed. And then he arrived. No announcement, no fanfare. The sound of boots hitting dirt. Slow, deliberate, heavy enough to carry weight. Caleb Hartman hadn't been seen in town for 3 months. People noticed that too. He led his horse by the reins, the animal calm and obedient, head low. The saddle was worn, leather darkened by sweat and years of use. Caleb himself looked like he'd been carved from the same land that surrounded the town. Broad shoulders, powerful arms, skin marked by sun and scars both old and newer than they should have been. He stopped when he saw her. It wasn't dramatic. He didn't freeze or gasp or stare like the others. He simply stopped walking, as if his body had decided before his mind caught up. For a moment, everything went quiet. The mountain stood unmoving. The wind paused. Even the horse seemed to sense it. Caleb's eyes lifted, steady and sharp, and met her. Something passed between them, brief, invisible, undeniable. Recognition, challenge, warning. No one watching could have said, but everyone felt it. Caleb had a reputation in Red Willow. Men respected him. Some feared him. Most avoided him unless necessary. He owned land north of town. Good land, hard-earned. He didn't talk much. Didn't drink much. Didn't smile at all. They said his wife had died years back. They said his temper had died with her. They said if you crossed him, you'd regret it. They said a lot of things. Caleb took one step closer. That was when the murmuring started. Low voices, sharp glances, speculation blooming like rot. Who's that woman? She don't belong here. Does he know her? Is he really? Caleb ignored them. He always did. He stopped just a few feet from the fence, close enough to see the faint line of dust along her ankle, close enough to smell sun-warmed skin and dry grass, close enough to notice that, despite the heat, she wasn't sweating. She looked down at him, not with fear, not with flirtation, but with something steadier, something harder, curiosity. You lost? He asked. His voice was low, roughened by years of dust and silence. It wasn't unkind. It wasn't gentle either. No, she said. One word, calm. Certain, that answer drew a few sharp breaths from nearby onlookers. People weren't used to women speaking to Caleb Hartman like that. He studied her for a moment longer than necessary. Not in pieces. Not like the other men did. He took her in the way a man measured land. Slow, careful, considering consequences. A town doesn't see many strangers, he said. I noticed. Her eyes flicked past him briefly to the watching faces. She didn't look intimidated. She looked aware. You passing through? He asked. She shook her head once. Oh, not today. Something in her answer tightened his jaw. He shifted, resting one knee against the dirt without quite kneeling yet, his posture relaxed but grounded. The movement drew attention, because men like Caleb Hartman didn't lower themselves for anyone. A few whispers turned sharp. Is he kneeling? What in God's name? But Caleb wasn't kneeling for her. Not yet. He reached out and adjusted the rope on the fence, testing its strength, eyes never leaving her face. People will start talking, he said. They already are. A corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile. More like an acknowledgement. You don't seem worried. I've had worse things said about me. That stopped him. Caleb straightened slowly, meeting her gaze fully now. There was something in her eyes that didn't belong to Red Willow, something hardened by roads and nights without shelter, something that had learned how to survive without permission. You should be, he said quietly. For what? For what this town does to women it doesn't understand. Silence stretched between them. Then she spoke again, softer this time, but no weaker. The wind picked up, stirring dust around their feet. Caleb exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled. He glanced once more at the people watching from doorways and porches. He knew how this looked. He knew what it would become by nightfall. He also knew walking away would haunt him longer than staying ever could. She hesitated, just a fraction of a second, but he saw it. Does it matter? She asked. Yes. Another pause. Eliza, she said at last. It wasn't the truth. Caleb knew at the moment she said it, but he nodded anyway. I'm Caleb. Ante, I know. That too carried weight. Before he could respond, a voice cut through the air. Sharp, unwelcome. A Caleb Hartman. Sheriff Rourke stepped off the boardwalk, hand resting casually near his belt. He smiled, but his eyes were already measuring the woman by the fence like a problem waiting to happen. Are you bringing trouble into town now? Rourke asked. Caleb didn't turn around. No, he said, just standing. Rourke chuckled. Looks like more than that. Eliza, if that was her name, shifted her grip on the fence, knuckles whitening, Caleb noted, and something old and dangerous stirred in his chest. He lowered himself then, one knee touching the dirt, palm resting against the earth as if grounding himself to it. Not in submission. In declaration, the town gasped. Caleb Hartman had never knelt in Red Willow. Not for God. Not for the law. Not for any man alive. He looked up at her. Come with me, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Rourke stiffened. Eliza looked down at him, eyes searching his face for lies, for traps, for the kind of promise that always came with a price. What happens if I say no? She asked. Caleb didn't look away. Then this town will eat you alive. The sheriff scoffed. You don't get to decide that. Caleb finally turned his head, eyes cold as riverstone. Fuzu, watch me. Silence crashed down over Red Willow like a held breath. Eliza studied him for a long moment. Then she lifted her foot from the dirt and stepped over the fence. The rope creaked. The town stirred. And somewhere deep in Caleb Hartman's chest, a line was crossed that could never be uncrossed. Eliza's bare foot hit the dirt on Caleb Hartman's side of the fence. It was a small thing. A simple movement, but Red Willow reacted as if a gunshot had cracked the afternoon open. A murmur rippled through the street. Someone laughed, sharp and disbelieving. A woman whispered a prayer she didn't fully believe in. Sheriff Rourke's smile thinned, stretched tight over something colder. Caleb rose smoothly from his knee, dust clinging to his palm. He didn't touch Eliza, not yet. He merely stepped beside her, close enough that the space between them belonged to him now. You sure? He asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Eliza looked down the street, at the saloon, the hotel with its lace curtains, the men pretending not to stare and failing badly. She saw judgment everywhere. Hunger, too, not the kind that wanted food. Then she looked back at Caleb. I already stepped over, she said. Didn't I? A faint exhale left him, half relief, half resignation. Yes, he said. You did. Sheriff Rourke cleared his throat. Caleb, we don't know who she is, where she came from, what kind of trouble she brings. Caleb swung up into the saddle in one fluid motion and took the reins. That's funny, he replied. A few missed the same thing about this town. A few men chuckled, most didn't. Rourke's eyes narrowed. You making this your responsibility? Caleb glanced down at Eliza. She was close enough now that he could see the faint scars along her forearm. Thin lines pale against sun-kissed skin. Old. Careful. Intentional. Yes, he said. I am. The word responsibility hit harder than claim ever could. Rourke hesitated. He knew Caleb's limits. Knew and pushing further would end badly. The sheriff tipped his hat, the gesture stiff. Then she's on your land, he said. Your rules. Your consequences. That's how land works, Caleb replied. Rourke turned away, but not before his eyes flicked once more to Eliza. Calculating, interested, dangerous. Oh, come on, Caleb said. He offered his hand. Not gripping, not commanding, just open. Eliza stared at it. She had taken hands before, hands that pulled, demanded, promised safety, and delivered something else entirely. She knew what hands could do. Slowly, she placed her fingers in his palm. Caleb's hand closed, not tight, steady. The contact sent a strange jolt through both of them. Not heat, not fear. Recognition. He lifted her into the saddle ahead of him. Careful, respectful, his touch brief and deliberate. She settled easily, as if she had ridden this way before. As if she trusted the horse more than the man behind her. Maybe she did. They rode out of Red Willow under a sky too blue for forgiveness. The town faded behind them, replaced by open land and the whisper of wind through tall grass. The road north cut through rolling hills and dry creek beds, the mountains rising closer with every mile. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Caleb was aware of everything. Her posture, the way she adjusted to the horse's gait, the tension she carried in her shoulders. She was not relaxed. She was prepared. That he understood. You didn't have to do that, she said eventually. Do what? Stand like that. In front of everyone, he considered. Yes, he said. I did. She glanced back. Oh, why? Caleb didn't answer immediately. The truth was layered, tangled with old ghosts and newer instincts. Because Rourke would have found a reason to question you, he said finally. And Red Willow questions turn into rumors. What do you turn into? He met her gaze steadily. No unnecessary decoration, no softness. Eliza took it in quietly. You live alone, she said. Yes, no hired hands? Not anymore. She didn't ask why. Caleb dismounted first, then helped her down again. His touch was minimal, but she noticed the care. You can stay in the guest room, he said. There's water in the pump out back. Supper's simple. That's it, she asked. That's it. She studied him. No questions? There will be, he said. Just not today, she nodded, strangely grateful. Inside, the house smelled like wood and soap, clean. Sparse, a man's home built for survival, not comfort. Eliza set her small bundle down on the bed in the guest room. She rolled her shoulders, tension finally seeping out of her muscles. Caleb lingered in the doorway. You should know, he said. People will come asking. About why I brought you. And what will you tell them? That you're under my protection. Her gaze sharpened. Her protection usually comes with rules. Yes, he said. It does. She waited. You don't leave the land alone, he continued. Not yet. You don't speak to Rourke unless I'm there. And you don't lie to me. Eliza raised an eyebrow. That last one's interesting. I'll know, he said. She believed him. And you? She asked. What do I owe you? Caleb's jaw tightened. Nothing. Yet. That unsettled her more than any demand could have. Night fell fast. They ate in near silence, the only sounds the clink of utensils and the low hum of crickets outside. The lamp cast long shadows across the table, turning Caleb's face into something carved and unreadable. Afterward, Eliza stepped outside. The sky was enormous, stars scattered like broken glass across black velvet. She hadn't seen a sky like this in a long time. Not without fences, not without eyes watching. Caleb joined her, leaning against the porch post. You still think you made the right choice? She thought of Red Willow, of Rourke's eyes, of the way the town had leaned forward when she stepped over the fence. Yes, she said. For tonight. Caleb nodded. A howl echoed in the distance. Wolves far enough not to be a threat. Close enough to be a reminder. Tomorrow, he said, we talk. About what? Who you are, he replied. And who's looking for you. Eliza's fingers curled slowly at her side. Not everyone who looks, so she said, wants to find. Caleb turned to her, something dark and protective stirring behind his eyes. On my land, he said, they don't get a choice. The wind swept across the porch, carrying dust, grass, and the quiet certainty that whatever Eliza had fled was not finished with her, and neither was Caleb Hartman. Morning came to the Hartman ranch without ceremony. No bells, no whistles, just pale sunlight creeping across the floorboards and the distant sound of water moving over stone. Eliza woke before the sun fully cleared the mountains. It was habit. She lay still on the narrow bed, eyes open, listening. The house made quiet sounds, wood settling, the faint creak of a beam responding to temperature, the muted rhythm of a man already awake and moving with purpose. Caleb. She exhaled slowly. For the first time and longer than she cared to remember, she hadn't woken to shouting, or hands, or the sharp edge of fear slicing her back into consciousness. There were no locked doors, no chains, no eyes waiting for her to make a mistake. That unsettled her. Eliza rose, pulled on the simple clothes Caleb had left folded neatly on a chair. Worn but clean, practical, clearly not chosen to flatter. She appreciated that more than she would ever say. Outside, the ranch breathed. The land stretched wide and honest, grass shimmering silver green under the morning light. The river glinted beyond the trees, its voice low and steady. Horses grazed quietly, lifting their heads only briefly when she stepped onto the porch. Caleb stood near the corral. Shirt already darkened with sweat, sleeves rolled, muscles working as he repaired a loose rail. He didn't look surprised to see her. "The coffee's on," he said. She joined him without comment, leaning against the fence opposite. The space between them felt different in daylight, less charged, more exposed, harder to hide in. "You sleep?" he asked. "Yes." That was the truth. He nodded as if he'd expected no other answer. "Today," he said, tightening the rail into place, "you tell me what you can." "And if I can't?" she asked. "To know if it is that." He met her gaze evenly. "Then you tell me that." She studied him, really studied him this time. The lines around his eyes spoke of restraint, not softness. His strength wasn't performative. It was earned, honed by necessity. "You don't push," she said. That answer carried weight. They drank coffee on the porch. Bitter, hot, real. Eliza wrapped her hands around the cup, grounding herself in the heat. "You asked my name yesterday," she said. "Yes." It wasn't Eliza. Caleb didn't react. He simply waited. "My name," she continued, "is Margaret Vale. The name fell into the space between them like a stone dropped into deep water. Caleb's brow furrowed, not with recognition, but with calculation. "A Vale," he repeated. "A where from?" "A south. Mining country. 2 towns over from nothing worth remembering." "What happened there?" Margaret's jaw tightened. "A men." That he understood too. "Who's looking for you?" he asked. She hesitated longer this time. "My husband." The word sat heavy and wrong in her mouth. Caleb set his cup down carefully. "You said he died." "I said people thought he did." Caleb's eyes darkened. Not with anger, with focus. "Explain." Margaret inhaled. He wasn't a good man. Not before the money, worse after. She told it slowly, the mind strike, the violence, how power had settled into her husband's hands and poisoned everything it touched, how women became bargaining chips, how silence became survival. "How'd you get away?" Caleb asked. "I ran," she said simply, "and I didn't look back." "You leave him alive?" "Yes." That was the part she feared saying most. Caleb stood, the porch creaking beneath his weight. "He won't stop," he said. "No," she agreed, "he won't." "And Red Willow?" "I didn't plan on staying anywhere," she admitted. "I just needed rest." And you found a fence," Caleb said. "And a man who knelt," Margaret replied. Their eyes held. Caleb exhaled. "That man you married, what kind is he?" She swallowed. "The kind who doesn't forgive being embarrassed." Silence followed. The river kept moving. "Then you're not staying here by accident," Caleb said at last. "You're staying because this land is defensible. You offering me shelter?" she asked. "Or a battleground?" Caleb's answer came without hesitation. Both. That afternoon, a rider appeared on the southern ridge. Caleb saw him first. The horse was fine bred. Expensive. Not the kind ridden by drifters or ranch hands. The man sat straight-backed, dressed clean, his hat tilted just enough to look confident. "Looks like trouble," Margaret said quietly. "Yes," Caleb replied. "It does." The rider stopped at the edge of the land, far enough to be polite, close enough to be seen. He raised a hand in greeting. Caleb mounted his horse and rode out to meet him. Margaret watched from the porch, heart pounding despite her best efforts to stay calm. The men spoke for several minutes. She couldn't hear the words, but she could read posture. The rider leaned forward, gestured, smiled. Caleb didn't. Finally, the rider tipped his hat again and turned away, retreating down the ridge. Caleb returned slowly. "Well?" Margaret asked. "He was asking after a woman," Caleb said. "Odd." dark hair, quiet eyes, answers to more than one name, her breath caught. He offered money, Caleb continued. A lot. And I refused. She searched his face. Why? Caleb met her gaze steadily. Because he didn't ask like a man looking for his wife. How did he ask? Like a man reclaiming property. Margaret closed her eyes. He's closer than I thought, she said. Yes, Caleb agreed. He is, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't fallen yet. You should leave, she said suddenly. Before this becomes your war, Caleb shook his head. Too late. She laughed softly without humor. You don't even know me. I know enough, he said. You crossed a fence instead of asking permission. You told the truth when it mattered, and you didn't run this morning. Oh, that doesn't make me worth dying for. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. Woodier, he said, worth is decided by what you protect. Margaret looked at the land, the river, the mountains that had watched longer than any town ever could. And you? She asked. What are you protecting? Caleb didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, what I lost once. They stood there as the sun dipped lower, knowing that Red Willow was already talking, that a dangerous man was already searching, and that the line Caleb Hartman had crossed at the fence was drawing blood now. The land had chosen a side, and so had he. Red Willow did not wait long. By the next morning, the rumors had already outrun the sun. They crept along fence lines, slipped through open windows, and settled into coffee cups and half-whispered conversations. By noon, the story had hardened, twisted, sharpened, reshaped into something dangerous. Caleb Hartman had brought a woman to his ranch, a woman with no past anyone could prove, a woman someone else was already looking for, and Red Willow had decided she didn't belong. The first sign came with dust on the road. Margaret saw it from the porch, a thin plume rising from the south, too steady to be wind. She felt it before Caleb said a word. A company, he muttered, setting down the saddle he'd been checking. 2 riders appeared, then a third. Sheriff Rourke rode in the middle. Margaret's spine stiffened. We should go inside. Caleb shook his head. No, they already know you're here. The horses slowed at the edge of the land. Rourke dismounted first, adjusting his belt with deliberate ease. The men beside him stayed mounted, locals Margaret didn't recognize, but their eyes told her enough. They were curious, and curiosity in Red Willow always came armed. Well now, Rourke called out, voice carrying easily. It looks peaceful out here. Caleb walked forward, stopping several yards from the men. He didn't offer his hand. State your business, he said. Rourke smiled thinly. Just checking in. Town's been buzzing. A town always buzzes, Caleb replied. Yes, Rourke agreed. But this time it's buzzing about you. One of the mounted men snorted. I didn't think you had it in you. Hartman? Caleb's gaze snapped to him. Cold warning. The man shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Rourke raised a hand. Easy. No one's accusing. Just asking questions. Margaret stepped forward then, standing beside Caleb. Rourke's eyes slid to her immediately. There it was. Ownership. Assessment. You must be the woman, Rourke said. Margaret met his stare. I must be. The town doesn't like surprises, he continued. Especially expensive ones. Caleb's jaw tightened. Get to the point. Rourke sighed, feigning patience. A man came through yesterday. Well-dressed, nervous but determined. Asked after you. Margaret felt Caleb shift beside her. Not toward her, but subtly closer. He's offering a reward, Rourke went on. Claims you're his wife. Says you ran off with something that belongs to him. Margaret's pulse thudded in her ears. That's a lie, she said. Rourke shrugged. Maybe. But men with money tend to make their truth stick. And what truth is Red Willow choosing? Caleb asked. Rourke smiled again. That depends on how this plays out. Caleb's eyes hardened. You're standing on my land. Yes, Rourke agreed. And I'm reminding you of something. This town protects its own. Caleb didn't blink. So do I. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. One of the mounted men leaned forward. You planning to keep her hidden forever? I'm planning to keep her alive, Caleb replied. Rourke studied Margaret now, really studied her. You're causing trouble, miss, whether you mean to or not. Margaret held her ground. I didn't ask to be hunted. No, Rourke said, but you did choose where to stop running. He turned back to Caleb. The man says he'll be back. With papers, with witnesses. Caleb laughed softly, without humor. Let him come. Rourke's smile faded. Careful, Hartman. Pride's gotten good men buried. So is cowardice, Caleb shot back. Rourke mounted his horse, clearly done playing friendly. I won't interfere, he said. Not unless I have to." He tipped his hat, once to Caleb, once to Margaret, and rode off. The dust lingered long after they were gone. Inside the house, the air felt heavier. Margaret paced. "He's not bluffing." "Ha ha 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 ha. He'll bring people who know me," she said, "or think they do." Caleb leaned against the table, arms crossed. "Then we make sure the truth is louder." "You don't have proof," she said bitterly. "All he needs is confidence and a pen." Caleb watched her carefully. "You said he didn't forgive embarrassment." "No," she agreed. "He punishes it." "I don't make a mistake," Caleb said. Margaret stopped pacing. "You sound certain." "I've known men like him," Caleb replied. "They overreach." "And when he does?" she asked. Caleb's voice dropped. "Then Red Willow will have to choose." She stared at him. "Between what?" "Between money," he said, "and blood." That night the land felt restless. Margaret couldn't sleep. She stood at the window watching moonlight wash over the fields. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound like a warning. A knock came at the door. She flinched, but it was gentle. Caleb stood there, hat in his hands. "You should know," he said quietly. "I won't force you to stay." She studied his face. "You think I should leave?" "I think you deserve the choice," he replied. "And if I go," she said, "he'll catch me." Or yes. "And if I stay," Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then things will get ugly." Margaret nodded slowly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You lost someone," she said. "A wife." Caleb's breath hitched just once. "She died because I thought land was enough to protect her," he said. Margaret looked up at him. Now, he said, "I know better." Silence stretched between them, thick, charged, dangerous. Margaret reached out, not to touch him, but to rest her hand against the doorframe beside his arm. "I'm tired of running," she said. Caleb's eyes darkened. "Then stay." Outside, far beyond the river, a rider watched the Hartman ranch under the cover of night and smiled.